Welcome to Buckle Up Podcast Universe with Brandon Rush.
Recording in progress.
And welcome back to the Buckle Up Podcast Universe with Brandon Rush and Mama Rush. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm actor Brandon Rush. I've been in 80 TV show and film productions, I think credited with 52, and I launched the Buckle Up Podcast Universe with my mom, Mama Rush. Thank you so much for tuning in. Currently, we are in 105 countries and downloaded in 1,087 cities around the world. So we've been absolutely blessed to do that. Today we have a very special guest on here, Casting Director Jessica Sherman. She is a powerhouse in the casting world. She has worked over 10 years, I believe, and she is someone who has helped shape performances across major studio films, streaming platforms, and independent cinema. Some of those movies include Star Trek Into Darkness, Star Wars Force Awakens, Predator Badlands, and several other films that we're going to talk. I think she has almost like 79 credits, or even higher than that. I was looking at her IMDb, what she will tell us all about here, but we're very happy to have her come on the show today. She, as I said before, has worked on major titles and went on to launch her own casting company in 2017. Her credits include Willow, Devil in Ohio, and Slate. She's known for discovering fresh, authentic talent and bringing grounded performances to the screen. We're about to welcome Jessica Sherman on here. And before we get to that, I just want to thank her and thank all the casting associates, casting assistants, casting directors who, without them, my career would not be where it is. They blessed me to be able to help my family. They have blessed me to be able to be there for my dad when he was battling pancreatic cancer. Before passing, I was able to be home, be with him because of the casting community, giving me opportunities in this business. I have been blessed to work in Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, London, Virginia, South Carolina, Pittsburgh, San Jose, and Mexico. And that is all because of casting directors, casting associates, and casting assistants who fought for me behind the scenes, gave me opportunities to perform. I had a very unconventional path into acting, where I had to perform at showcases to be seen because I couldn't get an agent to save my life at the time. And it was the casting directors in casting associates and casting assistants, and then casting directors that I saw performing in open mic night showcases in Los Angeles, in New York, in London, that saw that I had something and called me in and gave me the opportunity to perform before having agents. So I can't thank them enough. It's without them, man, I was the person struggling, working as hard as I possibly could within the limits of what I was able to do. And they just opened the doors wide open for me. Because of them, I've been blessed to work on Mayor of Kingstown, Powerpuff 2 Ghost, Criminal Minds, Blue Bloods for 5 years, Criminal Minds for 3 years. And several other shows I can't think right off the bat. So Ozark. There's a lot, but I forget the list sometimes. But it's just a blessing. And so the show has been a love letter to those people that have helped me, the casting directors, the casting producers, the casting associates, even the crews that I have been blessed to work with that have given me a 16-year career in this business. So that's why we're so grateful to have people like Jessica come on here today to share her story and bring her knowledge. I believe she is here. Mom, I'm going to go ahead and let Jessica in. Yes, ma'am. Let's see here. Hold on one second. Loads. Jessica, hello.
How are you?
I'm doing so well. How about yourself?
Good. Sorry, still a touch delayed, but I appreciate your flexibility.
Oh, of course, we're super down to earth. I'm waiting for Mama Rush to come on here. She just has to hit the sound system, I believe.
Get it. All righty. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hey, Jessica, this is Mama Rush.
Hi, Mama Rush. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, Jessica, it's all about you today. And I love the fact that you all started this. I discovered you from An Actor Despairs. And then I love that episode. I listened from start to finish. And then I discovered the Tipsy Casting that you all have as well, the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, we've been doing it. This is our fourth season.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. Awesome. Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is you're our 155th guest today.
Hmm.
Oh, wow.
So,
Congratulations to you.
hey, it's a grind, but hey, you know what? It's doing something that we love, but it's all about you. And Jessica, how did you end up as a girl from California, right?
Yeah, yeah. Didn't go too far.
Okay, well, how did you end up going into this the casting community or casting, however you want to how do you ever you want to do it? How did you end up becoming a casting
Yeah.
director, basically?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because I don't have sort of the usual trajectory. I never wanted to be an actor. I actually grew up very much interested in the music experience. I was never an artist either in that way, but
Okay.
I was just a mega fan, and I grew up in Lancaster, California, which is
I know what that
maybe
is.
like. Yeah, maybe an hour 45 outside of LA. And
Uh-huh.
so we had when I was growing up, we had a very rich, like punk rock emo music scene. And
Okay.
so I was very into that. And so in my brain, I thought if the dream of dreams could happen, I would be like an A&R music exec and
Oh
like
wow.
seek talent on that side of things. But
Absolutely.
it also was very far-fetched from my reality because my parents are originally from Ukraine. They're
Okay.
immigrants. And so
Mm-hmm.
I first generation American, very rigid expectations of what is allowed, very practical, stable, traditional expectations there. And so I went to school. I did business and economics. I studied marketing
Oh wow.
and yeah, very not in the arts at all. And so when I graduated, I learned that a friend of the family was in the industry in international distribution. And I thought, you know what? I was always like a fan, like I would track actors from one
Hmm.
thing to another just as a fan.
Yeah.
And it never really occurred to me that that was a job by any means.
Okay.
And so yeah, so when I saw that she was in the industry, I was just like, oh, well, if she can figure it out, I can figure it out too.
Hmm.
And when I graduated, I got an internship at a different international distribution company and a voiceover agency.
Okay.
And the voiceover agency was my first exposure to working with actors, and it's where I fell in love with working with actors. And voiceover on the agency side, they have a very different experience than theatrical
Hmm.
agents because they have autonomy from casting. And so, sort of traditionally, casting would release their breakdowns, and then the agents would decide who on their client list would audition for those
Oh.
roles, and then they would narrow it down after they received the auditions from their talent and then send their top choices. So it was like in a very small scope, I got to see what the casting director does, but based
Yeah.
on their own client list. And so I thought, well, and I was talking to voiceover casting directors all the time. So I I was like, oh, this must be a thing on the theatrical side too.
Hmm.
And that was sort of my exposure into casting and like understanding. I had very minimal understanding of what a casting director is or does, but I
Okay.
was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And that was sort of, and it took me about a year and a half to break into casting because it's such a niche craft that you really need hands-on experience. And so while I was working at the voiceover agency, I was basically seeking anybody who would give me casting experience. And I
Mhm.
did everything that an actor would do at that time. I was building a website with your resume on it, sending out packets with your resume,
Yeah.
sending greeting cards, and none of it was working for me. And now in hindsight, I realize that they thought I was an actor trying to get in with casting versus
Oh
someone
wow.
pursuing casting. But
Hmm.
my last ditch effort was I started crashing workshops to meet associates and casting directors, and that was the thing that worked for me. And
Okay.
so there was a associate who's no longer in the industry, but he took me under his wing. Whenever he had a commercial or a short film that he was casting, he would let me sit in and learn by osmosis. And so that was sort of my entry point because then he introduced me to the casting directors that I would later end up working with as my first job.
Oh wow. That's quite the story. And Jessica, we have something in common there. I did showcases to get me I showcases what made my career. I think you
Yeah.
said that you workshops, or you said either workshops or showcases, I think.
I would
Workshop.
do the workshops,
Yeah, the
yeah, but
workshops. That's what I meant. The
showcases are
workshops.
just as valuable in that space when you're just trying to like, especially I know that there's like the agency, like the
Hmm.
showcases to get reps, and then on the other side. But yeah, for me, it was the workshop specifically. Yeah.
It's so glad, I'm so happy to hear you say that because that's literally how I made a name for myself, was doing those workshops. That's how I got discovered that way. But with you doing those workshops, what was, I guess, that year of you grinding and switching and getting to that position where you started working in that casting community? What was that like for you?
I mean, I was just a sponge as much as I could be. I was working a full-time job
Oh, wow.
still. And I was also, I'm very lucky to have grown up here because my parents, after I graduated college, they moved to Santa Clarita.
Okay.
And so I was very lucky to be able to live with them while I was doing the grind of trying to break
Mhm.
in. And so, I was very privileged in that space to be able to lean on my family so in addition to that, I was also commuting originally from Lancaster to West Hollywood and then Santa Clarita to West Hollywood.
Still
And
a
so it
drive.
was, yeah, so I was like, I thank God I was in my like early 20s because if I had to do that now, it would not be I would not survive it. But
Oh, not at
um,
all. That's tough.
yeah. Yeah. So on evenings and weekends, I would go and I would sit in on the commercial sessions and the short films and just try to absorb as much as I can. And I remember that casting associate before I officially got in, he had a friend of maybe it's like a friend of a friend who was trying to cast a short film.
Hmm.
And so he was like, go do it, go cast the short film. And I was like, I don't know what any of that means.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I really like I was just like I was scheduling and I was learning on the fly basically. And so yeah, so after that year was up, I he called me. I remember it was end of February of 2010. He called me and he was like, "Hey, I have this job opportunity. Like it's the real deal. It's for an assistant position. Like send me your resume." And so I
Mhm.
sent it to him and he called me back 15 minutes later and he was like, "Just kidding. It's a big studio movie. They want someone with experience. So,
Oh,
not gonna happen." And so I called
Mhm.
my dad at that point and I said, "I have this great opportunity. If necessary, would you support me for a year while I go
Mhm.
back to being an intern and we'll see what happens." And so he said, if it doesn't happen in a year, you're going to law school.
yeah.
And nothing puts a fire under your butt than something you absolutely don't want to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh, so I said yes, and then I called the associate back, and I was like, "Listen, will they take a full-time intern? I'll quit my job, whatever."
Wow.
And
mhm.
so I met with them. The meeting was great. They said yes, they'll take me. So I quit my job, gave them 2 weeks, and then started back as an
Mhm.
intern,
Holy
Mhm.
not
smokes.
knowing how long it would take. So
Yeah.
I was very lucky. It was my first job, or it started as an intern, but they after 9 days they hired me as their assistant,
Man.
which was very lucky. I don't think that
Yeah.
happens very often, but that happened. And then I was fortunate that it ended up being for Alyssa Weisberg and April Webster.
Okay.
And that the two of like independently, they're phenomenal in their own, with their own resumes, but together it's a little bit of Captain Planet of with our powers combined, we can do
Yeah.
anything.
I am Captain Planet. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was really the jackpot of all first jobs because I
Yeah.
thought when I got it, I was under the impression that it was the remake of Little Darlings, which was a,
Okay.
a movie I think from the late '80s, early '90s with
Mhm.
Tatum O'Neal, and I learned very quickly a couple weeks into the job when they were losing their minds in the morning. They're like, "Are the lists ready? Are the lists ready?
Yeah.
Steven's coming. Steven's coming." I learned that it wasn't Little Darlings, but it was actually Super 8, and that Steven
Mm.
Spielberg was coming
Holy
in.
smokes.
Yeah. uh,
Holy smokes.
and J.J. Abrams was directing, and so it
Oh, wow.
was the jackpot of all first jobs.
Yes.
And so I got
Blessed.
very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? I think it's also a testament to your character because look at you and you're I'm hearing the belief in yourself. You went on a leap. You asked your family if they would support you while you followed your dream, and that's a testament to your parents too.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up working out like that. Sometimes having that leap of faith and saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to believe in myself. I'm going to try and do this thing that might make me happy. And you end up doing everything right and grinding. And your first big job is working at a Steven Spielberg film. I mean, I don't think that ever happens.
No, and I think like my family is Jewish, and so I think it's also like the best case scenario
Yeah,
of like the
Mm-hmm.
the filmmakers out there that mean something to your
absolutely.
culture or whatever, and it was always funny because my dad, when I was in the pursuit of
Hmm.
casting,
Mm-hmm.
my dad's like, "Oh, you're not successful till you work with Spielberg," and then I got to be like, "First one out of the gate. Look at that." What are you gonna say now?
Yeah, absolutely. You proved it. You proved it to them, and they proved it to yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a blessing for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to ask you a
That's
quick
fine.
question. I hear you talk about your parents and your father, and I love about my parents, and they were always about wanting the best for us and pushing us as well. But I want to ask you, how do you still have family in Ukraine? And are your family, if you have family there, are they doing well? How are your parents doing as well? Before we get into a
Yeah.
little bit more about the casting in that area.
Yeah, I think we're very blessed that most of my family, I would say all of them, I think outside of like friends that my parents grew up with, like most of them
Uh-huh.
are in the States or in Israel. So I think it's very it's a very tumultuous time sort of for my family generally, but
Mm-hmm.
thankfully they're all safe right now,
Okay.
and I will say, when the war in Ukraine broke out, I think my
Mm-hmm.
dad had a very difficult time
Oh wow.
sort
Mm-hmm.
of processing that because as immigrants, as soon as, when I was a kid at least, but from what my understanding was, as soon as they became American citizens, I think
Mm-hmm.
coming from a communist country
Mm-hmm.
and very oppressed space, and it was all very, things were very rationed and that sort of thing. So as soon as they
Mm-hmm.
became Americans, they became very proud Americans and tried
Oh,
to
wonderful.
assimilate as fast as possible. And
Uh-huh.
so I think it was interesting to see my dad struggle in that space of
Mm-hmm.
trying to, like, feeling such a connection to his homeland
Uh-huh.
after so many years of trying to just assimilate as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think, it's definitely something, it humanizes your parents in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
that you
Mm-hmm.
start to you learn something else about them. But it was, thankfully everybody is safe.
Oh, well, great to hear that. And
Yeah.
look at what they brought to this country
Yeah.
and the diversity that our country now has or always
Yeah.
will have. But look at you, the
Yeah.
success you are. That genetics all the way here doing a
Oh, thank you.
fabulous job out there. So you mentioned April Webster.
Webster.
What lesson from
Yeah.
Webster still shapes how you cast today?
Yeah, I mean April is still casting, so
Mm-hmm.
she's still going strong. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I was very blessed to start in her office because she is somebody, like, I like to call her Mother Nature of casting. Like,
Uh-huh.
she's somebody who has always been, in a pre-self-tape era, that it was always about making sure that the actors feel safe, that they can do the work, that they have the environment and the safe space to be able to be vulnerable and to do the work that's necessary to get to, where we all want, like, them to be the solution to our problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is something that who knows if I started in a different office that had different ethos, that, what that would look like. But, like, I feel like I was very lucky to start with her, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I spent most of my career with her. I was with her from intern to co-casting director. I was with her for
Oh
almost eight
wow.
years, which is
Mm-hmm.
very rare for a casting, like, support staff. Like,
Mhm.
we're just like actors in the way that we are project to project.
Mm-hmm.
And so normally a lot of casting support staff jump around from office to office wherever the job is. And
Mm-hmm.
because April was always busy, I got
Mm-hmm.
very lucky to also always be busy.
Oh,
Hey, that's a
wow.
good thing.
Yeah, it's great when you have great managers that become
Yeah.
mentors or I'm a scientist, and I worked in a great space when I first started working for DuPont Company in safety,
Wow.
and that's followed me all through my career. That safety, the way those directors were and all. But we're dealing with you now, so but anyway, you learn from
Yeah.
them, and then you carry that on. Through your career, which is a beautiful thing. And so, and now I want to talk about Brandon. You come in anytime you want
Yes,
to
ma'am.
because you know
I'll let you
Mama.
go. It's up to you.
You know, yeah.
We're a
Okay.
team.
Well, I want to ask a
Go
question.
ahead, mom. Yeah.
What makes a new actor stand out immediately to you?
I think that is the hardest question to answer because I think the job, the relationship in a job between a casting director and an actor is a long-term relationship. And I
Oh.
think that is, for me, it's the time of getting to know an actor, which that timeline, unfortunately, has been stretched out even more than it normally is because we're not in person anymore, which hurts my heart every time. But it's, it is the reality of the current landscape of the process. And so I think it's like trying one, it's the authenticity of an actor when they are bringing themselves to the character. I think that those are the things that stay with us, and to
Mm-hmm.
try to bring more opportunities to those actors. So I think especially in the self-tape environment, when we're looking at, so many tapes, I think there is a distinction that we can tell when an actor starts a tape of, this is what I think casting is looking for versus this is
Mm-hmm.
what I bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that, speaks volumes when we're going through tapes, because if we're all, if as an actor we're all starting the tape of, this is what I think they're looking for, everybody starts to look and sound the same. It's the same beats, it's the same everything.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, what Brandon's bringing to the table is going to be entirely different because of lived experience and, your qualities than, someone over here is going to bring.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, there's no cookie cutter answer for it. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
there's time and like patience and getting to know each other, plus this element that is your own X factor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that answer,
Yeah.
Jessica. I'm gonna give you one that might be kind of long-winded, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be good. Would you do me a favor, and for our audience and for actors and actresses out there, would you please break down the difference in one for auditioning for TV and then one with auditioning for movies? You might have to do TV first because I know with TV is just a quick thing. It goes from like you people audition, then it's out of your hands. You send it over to the director, writer, producer, but then it has to go to studio network and all that. If you wouldn't mind explaining that, plus then explaining the movie side, which I
Yeah.
think might be different.
Yeah, so I always like to say that casting for TV is casting by committee. It
Okay.
is, there are so many people involved, like between 30 to 40 people by the end of your time you're done with the process.
Wow.
So, for us, we'll release the breakdown, we'll go through the process of making the selections of, asking actors to tape, narrowing things down, depending on if it's a co-star or guest star role.
Mhm.
There will be different, and which studio or network you're working with, there's a different process to each one potentially.
Okay.
So we'll go down through the process. We'll make our selection based on the tapes that we've seen or the auditions that we've conducted via Zoom or in person maybe.
Yeah.
So we'll narrow it down. We'll usually include a demo reel in addition to the actual audition.
Okay.
Um, the hope is that we've had a long-standing relationship with our showrunners to understand what is appealing to them versus what is distracting to them.
Okay.
And we will curate our selection based on that, even if it's down to like, there's something in your demo reel that I know will distract the showrunner, so I'll cut it
Mhm.
out
Okay.
before I send it. So we'll send that stuff to our team. So that's usually the director of the episode, the showrunner, the line producer, the writers, if there's any EPs on the writing staff. And this is also sort of a precursor to this. Before we go through the audition process, we episodically we will have a concept meeting, a concept call. So the same people are on that call. It's
Yeah.
ourselves, the director of the episode, the writer of the episode, the showrunner, the line producer, and if we're shooting in a different state, country,
Okay.
wherever, we'll have the local casting team on the call as well. And so we have first the creative side of the conversation. What are we looking for? Is there a prototype? Did you write it for somebody specific? Do we make an offer to somebody first before we start, engaging other actors in the
Hmm.
process? Is there a familial connection to anyone we've cast? What's the arc of the character? Do we have, so we know what we're asking of actors of what they need to be able to handle in this
Okay.
process. So we'll have the creative conversation, and then we have the less fun side, which is the budgetary side of it, of like, what can we afford? What are we working with? Are we looking, like, if we're shooting in Canada, are we only looking in Toronto, or are
Hmm.
we also looking, in the States or internationally? What can we work with? So that all goes into the consideration when we're releasing our breakdowns and looking for actors. And then we'll send our selects through that process. Um, Once hopefully we are part of the conversation of who is the best fit for the role, because typically we'll have a better understanding of an actor's, like, the full breadth of their work versus this moment in time of
Yeah.
what the person is seeing. So we are part of that conversation. They'll narrow it down to one to two actors for each role. And then we have to send it. They'll usually put it in order of preference of,
Okay.
they have to be comfortable with both actors potentially getting the job, but they'll put it in order of preference, and then we'll send it to the studio. The
Mhm.
studio has 13 executives there
Wow.
that we have a liaison that we work with directly, and then they sort of funnel it through whomever on their side. They all sign off. Great, great, great. You've passed through studio. Then you have to go to the network, and the network has their own 10 to 13 executives that sign off on it. Different Each, executive has their own hierarchy within. There could be one person at the top that says, no, 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 we don't think this is the right. And
Oh,
then
wow.
either we have to either fight for the person that we want, or we
Hmm.
start from scratch, depending on what the communication is of why this person's not working. So that is the TV side of it,
Okay.
of just the episodic.
Jesus.
When we're testing, if we're doing series regulars,
Yeah. Oh, I didn't
you
think about that.
know, that is a whole other very stressful experience for the actor of, when you're testing for a series regular, it's a more expansive search. When we're doing a pilot, we have 10 to 12 weeks to cast a pilot typically.
Okay.
And so we'll start with obviously the series regulars and work our way down as we go through the process. But when you're going through that process and you're down to, we have to do testing. And
Hmm.
so as an actor, you'll never test by yourself. You will always be against somebody, or up to three actors total. And so when you're doing that, you usually have a test date that's scheduled in advance, and your agent, or typically your agent or lawyer, will pre-negotiate your contract of what the series regular deal would look like. And on test day, you go to the studio and you sign that contract, and then you walk in. And this is typical for more network TV, that you'll walk into this room, like Warner Brothers, for example, they have test rooms, which is basically a theater setting. It has a
Okay.
stage, it has, recessed seat, or ascending seating. So you'll go in onto the stage. There's those 13 executives that I mentioned, live and in person, waiting for you to perform. You have a reader, and we're shooting it.
Okay.
And so you come and you do your performance and you hope for the best. And then they decide if you pass studio testing. If you pass studio testing, then that tape that we shot goes to the network, and that happens behind the scenes.
Hmm.
For you as an actor, once you sign your contract, we have 10 days to decide. I think it's 10 business days to decide if you're the person or not, or
Wow.
they'll try to extend it sometimes if they can't make a decision. It's very rare, I think, that extension happens. So they have 10 business days to funnel it up the ladder, and hopefully you end up with a choice. Sometimes they come back and they're like, we don't like anybody, try again.
Ooh.
Or they'll tell us why they don't like it, and like, all right, well, maybe we can make adjustments in the room that,
Mhm.
sometimes the executives have different opinions of where the story will go than the actual creators. And so
Yeah.
I mean, I've had it before. I was working
Yeah.
on a series for Turner, and we wanted an actress who she was straight out of Juilliard. She had a couple of short films um, that she had directed or produced and starred in. And they're like, well, we don't know if she can do X, Y, and Z. And it was for a limited series
Okay.
that, now these days any limited series can be a traditional series. So they were like, well, if we get a second season off of a limited series, like she might need to be able to do these things. So we need to see that. So we had to go to our writers. They had to write special scenes
Wow.
because otherwise they wouldn't approve her. And
Yeah.
so I had to call Bernie Telsey's office in New York and ask, would they do us a favor? Because she lived in New York
Okay.
and they weren't working on the show. I just asked as like casting director to casting director, would you
Yeah.
do us a solid and put her on tape? And so, because I didn't want to leave it to self-tape chance of
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
she was our choice. So,
Yeah.
so we fought for her to get it, and then they ended up approving her. But like, and
Okay.
then the show never went to a second season, so it didn't even matter.
Yeah.
So it's just like there are so many obstacles that can get in our way as creatives for on our side of things that directly affects you as actors. But like, so that's sort of like the testing process in a nutshell. For cable and streaming, I think they have a little bit more faith in their creatives.
Mhm.
So they basically, I've seen it done differently where, that they'll still do the signed deal, the actors will come in, but it's like it's the director of the pilot, it's the creator, maybe one writer and us, and it's
Yes.
more set up as like a work session rather than like a test.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Wow.
it's a
That's
little bit
amazing.
more creatively conducive, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't realize
Yeah.
it was that complex, but now hearing that, I'm like blown away. And I think that's important for our audience because obviously I work in the business for 16 years. So I wanted people to hear that because I constantly stick up for casting directors, casting associates, casting assistants because somehow actors and actors try to blame you all. But I'm like, no. They're the ones advocating for us. Like they're the
Yeah.
ones going to bat. It's these people higher up that are where the trouble comes into play. And
Yeah.
so,
I
go
I
ahead. Yeah.
think we're in a unique position because I think there are very few crafts and professions that are both the buyer and the seller.
Hmm.
And I think, for us, we are our process is we're the middlemen. Like it's even when like SAG was going through the negotiations during the strike era, like, they're talking about the casting process without ever including the casting directors in part of the
Really?
conversation. Oh, yeah. And so it's like our process is dictated by so many other factors, but we're always the first ones to blame and last ones to thank. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
And it's about time that you guys get the credit you deserve because I think now that you guys are being able to be nominated for Emmys and Oscars now for casting, is that
Yeah,
correct?
so we've had the Emmy for a while now,
Okay.
thankfully, and Oscars obviously this year was the first year that we were actually eligible for an Oscar, which is cool.
Long overdue. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
long overdue because you guys, I'm like, this doesn't happen without you all picking picking the people that come into these films. Like it's,
Yeah.
you all put this together. And so the next question that I asked was the movie side. Do you guys have more control on the movie side?
Yeah, I think it depends if it's like a huge franchise and there's a bigger, approval process from the studio side, but I do believe that the directors have more control
Mhm.
over the choices. And if you have an intimate relationship with your director, that, most of us we've done multiple projects with the same filmmakers, that we have a
Mhm.
shorthand with them, and there's a real opportunity for world building there. If I do a lot of indie film, and there is
Okay.
definitely the conversation of like, who are the actors that have value, quote unquote value, which I hate that descriptor, but it is the reality of what we're working in of, in terms of green lighting. So once
Okay.
we get past the green lighting process, then we really have an opportunity to like embrace fresh faces, thinking outside the box, and like really real world building. And so I think there's way more creative fulfillment in the film side of things than there is maybe in
Absolutely.
the TV side.
Okay, I was very fortunate. The reason I asked that, I was very fortunate because I went out for this movie, auditioned for this comedy. The casting director loved me, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Brandon, we actually wanted you for that part, but the director knew the director basically wanted to cast his a friend they knew, so they
Yeah.
cast him that part. But they're like, hey, Brandon, will you take this other part?" I said, "Absolutely." I love the work. It's
Yeah.
any day on set is a blessing. So.
Yeah.
With that also being said, the process of you, if you don't mind mentioning it, is when you were casting for, let's say, Star Trek and Star Wars, that's both J.J. Abrams.
Yeah.
Was that must have been pretty, I guess, extinguished trying to get those movies cast, or with trying to find the talent for that?
Yeah, I think, Star Trek was I was still sort of, I think I was still an assistant on Star Trek Into Darkness when I was coming up, and I was like clamoring for the associate position at that point. But, I was very much learning, and there were some roles that were tricky. And I think, for us, and also, you're paying homage to original material and actors that have already played these roles to a degree. And so, for Star Trek Into Darkness specifically, it was uh, we were trying to fit in the space of the original Khan, Ricardo
Yeah.
Montalban, and that was like we were having a very difficult time for whatever reason finding him,
Mhm.
and so we ended up throwing out the net a little further and widening what we were looking for. And that was sort of like he was already doing Sherlock, but like Benedict
Ben
Cumberbatch,
Cumberbatch. Yeah.
he delivered the best
Nailed it.
audition I had ever seen, especially with having very little information.
Oh.
And it was, and also like I talk about his audition all the time because there are so many actors that like are pushing the narrative of you have to have the most professional setup and the most beautiful camera and all of these things when you're doing self tapes. And like, dude was literally sitting at his friend's kitchen counter with an iPhone and like in a t-shirt, like the most,
Yeah.
there was nothing fancy about it, but he and we were all brought to tears by the end of his audition because
Wow.
the connection to the character was so clear and profound that it was like, this idea that every villain is not the villain of their own story.
Mhm.
Like
Oh.
there is a human connection to what we're looking for here, and I think it was sure the writing lent itself to go arch and to be the mustache twirly villain, but you want
Absolutely.
to find the grounded quality in these characters that give them the motivation to do what they're doing. And
Yeah.
so like that was a really cool experience to have of being part of that casting team. And
Mhm.
then Star Wars was like a whole other process because we were doing this international search for our two leads. Um, and it was, I always like to say that they signed us on for 10 weeks and we were on it for 11 months.
Holy smokes.
It
Wow.
was, I mean, honestly, anything that we were working on up to that point with JJ, it was always like, oh, we're on it for this short time. And then,
Yeah.
before we knew it, it was 9 months later. So, and that was just because, Star Wars specifically, I think it was so precious to so many because it was the relaunch of the
Mhm. Franchise.
franchise. And so it was really precious.
Mhm.
And so it was hard to get people to make decisions because they wanted to make sure they got it right.
Mhm.
But I traveled the Midwest doing open calls for 3 weeks, trying to
Really?
find, and we were doing it simultaneously in the UK as well. And I think it was, I mean, John Boyega was like
Yeah,
one
he's
of the
good.
last cast,
Really? Oh,
even though
wow.
he read so early in the process,
Yeah.
and so it's always an interesting thing is whenever things are dragged on for so long, you end up casting
Circling
somebody
back
you
to
saw
the
in the first 2 weeks of casting.
Yeah. Well, at least you guys had a good along. You guys did a phenomenal job in both those films. I just got to say that because I'm a huge Star
Oh,
Trek
thank you.
fan. Khan, Bing, it was amazing. And then he really is Khan to me. And I watched both the old ones and the new ones with my dad when he was alive. And then Star Wars, obviously. Mom, did you want to ask a question?
Oh, yeah, yes,
Yes,
yes.
ma'am. You're good.
First of all, hearing you talk, Jessica, it's like whew, blowing my mind.
Oh,
A lot that goes into, and we sit back and we as the audience just enjoy what you enjoy seeing the characters you put out there or the actors you put out there. And the reason I'm listening to you talk about this and I can hear some of the narrative I've had with Brandon or his conversation, but the self-tape is something. And I have seen Brandon do self-tapes when he's visiting with us. I've had to play a role in the self-tapes, I guess. And I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm
She's
scared to
great.
sneeze. I'm scared to do anything outside of it. And I always always think how he just has one little camera there off of his phone trying to do the self tapes. And his daddy would try before his daddy died of pancreatic cancer. He would try.
Oh,
His daddy had a voice like James Earl Jones and
oh,
beautiful.
wow.
And so the self tapes, I want to ask you, what's some of the biggest mistakes
Ooh.
actors make in self tapes?
Oh, let's think here. I think honestly, I think just o overthinking it. I think that I think it's hard. I do not envy an actor's position by any means, and I think in that position, like I try to provide as much context as possible. Sometimes it's not possible because, we're working on a Star Wars, and all we can give you is like the name and sort of, age range of the character sometimes. But I think, for me. I think the most I've seen is when actors are too focused on everything else, like having the props, having the this, having the that, versus focusing on the connection and the characters. And so I think there's a difference between building a scene so it's performative versus building a scene that gives you the environment or whatever that will help you connect to the character. I think right now we're seeing like a very big uptick, especially with like, Britt Lauer's audition for Severance and Odessa Zion's for Marty Supreme of like you're in, and I think there's a difference of like creating that environment for yourself to help connect you to the character and the urgency of something versus like the performative aspect of it, right? And that sometimes those things are a bigger distraction not only for the viewer but for the actor while they're in it because you're focused on like how do I use this prop in the moment versus what does this have to do with what you're talking about, right? Or the connection that you're building with the character opposite you. So I
Okay.
think that's probably the biggest one.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think
I-
that's a big one.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate what Brandon does too, because he really puts himself out there to get it done with little of nothing but a curtain, a sheet, or something behind him, and that's fine too. But how quickly do you know if someone is right for that role?
I mean, I think probably halfway through a self-tape, we have a pretty good sense of like if someone is, I think there's the distinction of someone being right versus the audition being on par with,
Mhm.
what's competitive. But I think we have a pretty quick sense of getting halfway through a tape of understanding if someone's right.
Okay. Jessica, quick question for you. How your journey from assistant to associate to now casting director, how is that? What did that teach you?
Oh, when you're not ready for things. I think for me, I think as soon as I got my feet under me being an assistant, I was constantly doing short films and stuff as a
Mhm.
casting director for student films or, whatever I could get my hands on because I did not grow up as an actor. I didn't train
Yeah.
as an actor. And so I think it was really important for me to um, understand the language
Mhm.
that actors speak and like understanding how adjustments are made.
Absolutely.
Um, and so for me, it was really important to be comfortable in my casting skin as I am going through each process. When I was an associate, when I was coming up under Alyssa Weisberg, she had always told me that being a casting associate is basically being able to be a casting director just without the contacts. And
Okay.
so it was important for me to learn. And also being a casting assistant and associate in an office that does film is
Hmm.
different than being one that does TV because contracts are different, negotiations are different, expectations are different. Like, that you learn so much in every project that you're doing. And I was particularly lucky because working for April for so long, because she was so busy, she also ping ponged through mediums. Like she did
Yeah.
TV, she did pilots, she did series, she did big franchise films. And so I had the privilege to be able to absorb so much and also being on stuff that like for Super 8, like I was thrown into the deep end as an assistant because we were doing a search for those kids.
Okay.
Like, we did it virtually, we did it at Paramount on the lot. We were looking for actors or kids that were not actors who had not been, the thing about working with J.J. Abrams is that, and I think this was like predated Star Wars. But like
Yeah.
at the time, he was like, I don't want recognizable faces here. I don't want the Disney kids because I want people to be consumed by the story and not distracted by the faces. And
Absolutely.
so that was so much fun to learn in because I got to educate myself on as many people who were out there as possible.
Yeah.
Even to like if you yes, we had Kyle Chandler who was coming off of Friday Night Lights, but we also had Ron Eldard who played
Okay.
Elle Fanning's dad, who was an incredible stage actor, Broadway actor.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have that balance of embracing actors from all spaces was really cool to grow up in that space.
Okay.
So I think the transition is something I think it's a lot harder for young assistants and associates to make that transition now because of the contraction of work and
Hmm.
that because there's like a contingency of casting directors who are getting all of the jobs,
Yeah. Oh,
which
wow.
means, it's casting is a rare craft that like, when you're an editor, you can only edit one project at a time. When you're a director, you can only be on one set at a time. Casting, you don't have that stipulation, really,
Yeah.
restriction. And now in the self-tape era, you really don't have that because you're not in the room with actors, and that's not
Hmm.
sort of restricting how many projects you can take on. So in this space, like there is not enough work in order for young like associates who've been at an office for 10
Yeah.
years to go out on their own the way that you would when I was coming up.
Yeah.
So they're stuck in those support positions for way longer. And I think then that makes the number of support positions, contracted as well.
Oh, man.
So we have a real problem within the casting community that there's not a lot of space for growth.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a ceiling based on the way that things are working right now. So, um,
I hope
the
that
way that
changes.
I hope so too, but the way that I came up is a very different landscape. And even then, it's like we got a little bit of false advertising when we were coming up of what was to
Mhm.
come, because of now this contraction. So it's a tricky space to work in right now, I would say.
Well, with you, that's definitely messed up on that avenue. That like I guess certain people are hoarding it all, but I think it's also great at the same time. You're a person who has come up to those levels and wants to give people that opportunity. It kind of sounds like to be able to expand the work for the trained associates, I guess, or trained assistants if you had to for your position.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I thank
go
you.
ahead. Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh no, that was it.
Finish. Okay. What should actors and this is my last question, Brandon. I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
question. What should actors focus on right now to get into rooms like yours, Jessica?
Um, I think it's just focusing on the craft and being active. I think being part of the community in different ways. Like I'm going to see even in LA where theater is not the mainstream,
Yeah.
I'm going to see my friends to support them. I'm seeing other actors. I had a rule for a long time I'm still trying to embrace as much as possible that whether I know you or not, if an actor invites me to see them in a play and I'm available, I'll go. And
Okay.
so I think like being involved in the community as much as you can and focusing on the craft, like those are going to be the two things that get you recognized in some capacity.
Oh,
Okay. Well, Jessica, you've been phenomenal today. I'm just going to hit you with a quick lightning round of questions. I don't want to hold
Oh,
you too much longer, but you have been amazing. We want to be conscious of your time. So,
so much.
um, what's that, Mom?
I've learned so much.
Yeah, you've been absolutely amazing. You've been outstanding and really humanized the whole entire process.
Yeah.
Like I
Oh,
feel like anyone that has heard you today will be feel that much more comfortable being able to speak to you, being able to reach out, or even in your office, because I always feel like that friendship or building that relationship is always a good thing. You've done that phenomenally today, just from hearing your background.
mhm.
thank you. I
So
appreciate that.
of course, of course. All right, here's a quick lightning round: film or TV?
Film for creative, TV for stability.
Okay. Drama or comedy?
These days, comedy,
Okay. Voice or visual performance?
visual.
Self-tape or in the room audition?
In the room.
Okay. Star power or raw talent?
Raw talent.
Ooh.
One performance you wish you had cast?
What, existing performances that, or
It could be
people that I've
or in the
seen.
future. Yeah, sure. Either or. You can do both if that makes you feel better. I don't know.
Um, okay, a performance that I wish I would have cast that already exists in the world. Um, I would say, oh my goodness, um, Jamie Dornan in The Fall,
Ooh, okay.
and a performance that I saw that I didn't get to cast because of whatever,
Mhm.
was an actress named Haley Magnus in Bates Motel,
Okay.
Mm.
Oh,
but I
wow.
didn't get to cast her, but I love
Okay.
her.
Yeah,
Big
you heard
fan.
it here, Haley.
Yeah,
It's Haley, right?
Haley, yeah.
What's your last name?
Magnus. She's an Australian actress
Okay.
that's out here in LA, but I met her there and I've been a big fan ever since.
Okay, amazing. Sorry. First thing you notice in an audition.
Um, if someone is grounded or not, like
Okay.
if the, sort of like the first instinct of the space.
All right. And then how fast do you know how fast you know? I guess you said how fast you know. I guess do you would realize in seconds or is it minutes that you realize?
I think probably like 20 seconds into it, but that I would say that's not distinguishing that I stop watching after 20 seconds
Okay.
because for me it's the thing that I always say, and this is something I said on Ryan's podcast as well, is that like you're never just auditioning for the role that you think you're auditioning for. So this idea that we stop watching after we realize you're right or wrong is not, I don't think, truthful to the process. We're
Okay.
we're watching through it because you might be right for another role that we're casting or going to be casting, because you just never know. Like a great performance is a great performance whether it's right or not.
Hmm.
So I think I want to debunk that narrative that
Okay.
people are pushing, that we stop watching after the first 20 seconds because we think you're right or you're wrong or whatever it is.
That's phenomenal. That's really good to know. And then my final question is if you could go back and tell your 18-year-old self anything, what would that be?
Hang on, it's going to be a roller coaster.
That sounds
I
good.
mean,
Yeah, no, hey, that nails it. Jessica, my mom's gonna say the final words, but thank you so much for your time today. How much just information you gave to us, and for how you blessed myself, my mom, and our audience. It really means the world to me. So I just want to
thank
thank you for that, and then I'll let Mama Rush bring it home.
Well, I can tell you this, at the Buckle Up Podcast universe, we have been blessed by your appearance on the show today, Jessica. Thank you for the work you do behind the scenes, shaping what the world sees and feels. You bring your authentic self to anything. I can see that myself. And Brandy, you can read it in her as well.
Mm.
Your discernment and the truth to casting. And that matters deeply. We appreciate you sharing your insight with us today. And as we always say here at the Buckle Up Podcast universe, stay ready, stay aware, and always buckle up.
All right.
amazing. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for having me.
You're beyond welcome. Jessica, we always give everyone a round of applause.
Oh,
So you knocked it out of the park, Jessica. You have a
thank you.
wonderful day, and thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Anytime. She was outstanding, Mom.
Yeah, Brandy,
Absolutely
yeah, you
outstanding.
can tell she really cares about the actors. That's not just,
Seriously.
you know,
Thank you. Oh,
It's
sorry.
sorry.
I'm still here.
Just talking behind the
Oh,
But
yeah.
thank you.
Oh,
I'm gonna
yeah.
jump off now.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're
All
great.
right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. She's really grounded. You can feel that.